Hi, I'm Tom Dorsey. To my right is Ric Lager. This is November 6, 2003. And Rick is down for the Advanced Stockbroker Institute, and I wanted to grab him while he was here and do a little videotaping on 401ks and a little bit about the history of where we are right now. Rick is probably, I would consider, the foremost authority on that subject, especially when it comes to the stockbroker or financial advisor and where we've come and where we happen to be right now in the new legislation. And I thought it would be good to get it on tape. So we may do a couple of these, so bear with us. And Rick, give me a little bit of background about where this whole thing began. You know, you started as a stockbroker, you've been a client of ours for ages. You learned the point and figure method, and then all of a sudden you began to gravitate more to the 401k advisory.
Mm-hmm.
You became a registered investment advisor, and you keep your number as a stockbroker also.
Right.
So you wear both hats. So let's begin with the 401k market. Back years ago, I remember the only thing that a worker cared about were the numbers coming out of government, that the employment numbers.
Right.
In other words, if I'm working at Philip Morris, the question was, can I make it to retirement?
Yeah.
How's the employment numbers coming out? Is Philip Morris going to lay off? It's not a matter of going to another position or another job or whatever. You work there for life.
Yes.
Or you work for Firestone, or you work for General Motors.
Mm-hmm.
They took money out of your account, they matched it, and at the end you retired and they paid you almost like the military.
Right. A percentage of your salary when you left,
Right.
at whatever level of pay
Exactly.
you left at. Right.
So the only concern you had was, can I make it to retirement?
Yes.
When Reagan got elected, who I think is one of the greatest presidents we ever had, decided that it might be better to have individual workers think and vote more in line with someone who was likely to enact legislation and laws that would benefit them, i.e. economically.
Right.
That would suggest that you would be more inclined to hire or vote for a Republican who was more fiscally responsive, let's say, in
Right.
general.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying, in general, that was the thought process.
And pro-business.
And pro-business, exactly. And that was the thought concept. So it went from a defined benefit plan to a, what do you call it?
Defined contribution.
Defined contribution, or
Right.
self-directed.
Self-directed.
Plan.
Right. You would have some kind of an economic incentive as an employee.
Right. Well, this worked well while the bull market was going on.
Absolutely. Yep. In the early 80s. 82, 83.
So tell me a little bit about how this has transformed till now.
Well, like you said, Tom, for all the reasons that companies wanted to shift the liability from them having to come up with the money to fund retirement. You have a lot of cases where you've read recently about the defined benefit plans of the automakers are so very much underfunded. When I know from my father being a Chrysler dealer for so many years, when Daimler-Benz bought Chrysler, that was the biggest liability on the balance sheet, was the underfunded pension plan. Because the UAW workers still have a defined benefit plan.
Well, let's explain that. How does it become unfunded?
Well,
underfunded.
Chrysler sets up a board with the union. They have seats spread evenly between the union and the board. And they match, and the employee matches contributions, and that money is pooled. So if Chrysler has 10,000 employees, all that money from 10,000 employees is all pooled into one big account.
Uh-huh.
And then that board would hire independent money managers.
Gotcha.
Like Mike and Harold, for example,
Right.
Mike and Harold and John.
Mm-hmm.
They have certain targets, they said, for every year for returns, 5, 8%, whatever. They have so many people moving through the automobile manufacturing workforce. They're trying to cut back as most often as they can, and early retire people to save money. But when you early retire somebody, you also owe them that pension benefit. So they have more money going out of that pool of money than they have coming in, number one. And number two, the returns have lagged so much. They've actually gone down.
They've actually lost
Money for several years in a row. So you have a liability on your balance sheet when you have a defined benefit plan. So what a lot of companies did, rather than have them carry the liability, they shifted the liability to the individual worker, where you basically were responsible for your own benefit, your own retirement nest egg, if you will, by self-directing on a menu of mutual funds. So the company no longer carries that as a liability on their balance sheet. They match at a certain level. You match contributions to how much ever you can afford to do, and then that money goes with you when you go. Part of Reagan's sales pitch was the portability of this money. You could take it wherever you moved from an employment standpoint.
And not only that, but part of the sales pitch to the corporation was that once you became a self-directed, if you went the self-directed,
Yes.
if there was any monies left over, it could be used as profit.
Exactly. If you weren't vested in 5 years,
it gave me an incentive to make it to change over to,
or at least pay for the plan.
Right.
You could take that money and pay for the cost of having a plan like that. What a lot of like I've said before, I do business with a lot of lawyers, and in the corporate structure with a lot of the law firms that I deal with, they've gone from the old professional associations to limited liability corporations in the last few years. And they've even taken that liability thing a step farther, in that they've now let everyone at the plan self-direct totally. So the limited liability corporation really doesn't have any liability whatsoever. They just give you your money, you fill out a form wherever brokerage firm you want it to go to, and you're on your own totally. You can buy pork bellies, or you can buy municipal bonds. You can do whatever you want to with that money. So they've even taken it a step farther.
and if you blow yourself up, there's no liability.
There's no liability whatsoever to the company. Under the present structure of most 401ks, there would be liability partially to the company. And what this ERISA legislation is trying to finally figure out, after having this on the books for almost 20 years, is if a company allows a third-party advisor to come in and provide advice, is there any liability of the plan sponsor? Does the employer share any liability in that advice, or how that advice does? This most recent legislation that was passed by the House on October 8th is going to clear all that up. And it's going to give the plan sponsor or the employer no liability whatsoever for outside advice, either made available to everybody at the plan, or just you hire me on an individual basis.
So the employer can just go out to an internet company that has some kind of a good
Financial
engines for one, and say, okay, we're going to hire financial engines, and this is your advice. And
we'll pay for it.
We'll pay for it. We'll pay for the
For a
financial
password
engines.
basis.
But what if they want to have their own advisor and say, I'm not interested in this mathematical concept of strategic allocation and whatnot. I want a real live person,
More personal.
who's going to watch the store.
Right.
Do they pay for that?
Companies that I've run into, Tom, are not paying for that at this point.
So they give you what they want to give you.
Exactly.
And
to try to shoot off or lay off the liability on the individual plan participant rather than them as a company. Because ERISA law currently could be interpreted that they are in breach of their fiduciary liability if they're not offering advice.
So the worker could be just as bad off when he gets in one of these mathematical programs that gives him a strategic pie, has no market guidance, has no sector guidance, has no nothing, just says, here's your strategic pie, and we'll update that once a year.
Exactly.
And the next thing he knows is we go through another 2 or 3 bad years, and he's lost significantly again. All during the time he said, professional.
Like you and Tammy have been on videos previously and talked about every site like that you go to, you get different answers.
Tammy went out there, she did. She went out there and went to all these different sites that create the strategic allocation pie and put the exact same information in for every one of them. Every one of them gave her a different pie.
Different pie. And they will. They always will do that. Yeah, they always will.
And the expectation is always, I think it's still probably 10, 11%. I found one the other day that was a 9.5%.
Okay.
But still 9.5%.
That's
guaranteeing you.
Going
and
forward.
it's an item. It's still pretty high.
Very pretty. Yeah, it gives you a false sense of security.
Oh, if I can have 9.5% and be guaranteed that, I don't care what strategic pie you give me. I'm putting every penny that I have in it.
Exactly.
And just sit back, 9.5%, 10%. I'm going to sit back and relax.
Let her go. Yep. And just worry about what you're going to do when you retire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Justin has given us the high sign on 8 minutes. We're going to stop and head right into another one.